People often talk about purpose as if it were a hidden object, something you're supposed to discover one day suddenly and completely, a single sentence that, once found, would finally organize your life. This is why the question creates so much anxiety. It sounds enormous, final, as if getting it wrong would mean wasting everything, as if purpose were a verdict rather than a process. Many people don't feel lost because they lack intelligence or ambition. They feel lost because they believe purpose should arrive as certainty, as clarity before action, as something you're supposed to know before you begin. But purpose rarely appears that way. When people go searching for purpose, they usually look for something dramatic, a passion, a calling, a role that explains who they are and why they matter. But this kind of searching often leads to paralysis, because the more we look inward for a definitive answer, the more we circle ourselves. We analyze endlessly, we compare, we wait for a feeling that never quite arrives. This is where Viktor Frankl offers a different way of thinking. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist and philosopher who wrote extensively about meaning, believed that purpose is not something we invent arbitrarily, nor something we uncover through endless self-examination. Meaning, in his view, emerges through relation, through how a person responds to what life places in front of them. This already changes the pressure. Purpose is not a personality trait. It is not a passion that strikes like lightning. It is not a brand statement waiting to be articulated. It is a pattern that forms over time. Modern culture encourages constant inward focus. What do I love? What am I good at? What would make me feel fulfilled? These questions are not useless, but they are incomplete. When asked in isolation, they tend to loop back on themselves, because the self alone cannot generate meaning. Frankl believed that meaning does not come from obsessing over the self, but from stepping beyond it, into work, relationships, and responsibility. Frankl argued that meaning tends to arise from three sources. First, from work, not just employment, but effort that contributes something beyond yourself, something that makes a difference, even if it's small. Second, from relationships, encounters that call you beyond your own concerns, that require presence, care, and responsibility. And third, from the attitude you take toward unavoidable difficulty, the way you respond to suffering, limitation, and circumstances you cannot change. Purpose, then, is not about feeling inspired all the time. It is about being needed in a way that feels honest. Many people feel lost because they are waiting for certainty before acting. They want to know their purpose before committing to anything, but meaning does not reveal itself in advance. It clarifies through engagement, through doing something imperfectly, but with presence, through staying long enough to notice what begins to matter. This is why purpose often feels invisible while it is forming. Purpose rarely announces itself loudly. It shows up quietly, as curiosity that doesn't fade quickly, as effort that feels difficult but not draining, as responsibility you don't resent carrying even when it's inconvenient. These are not dramatic signals, but they are reliable ones. Frankl believed that the wrong question is, what do I want from life? The better question is, what is life asking of me right now? That question is smaller, more humane. It doesn't demand a lifelong answer. It asks only for attentiveness. What draws your care, even when no one is watching? What kind of effort feels worth the cost? Where do you feel a quiet sense of rightness, even without excitement? Purpose is often mistaken for pleasure, but pleasure fades. Meaning endures effort. If something holds you through difficulty, it is worth listening to. Another common mistake is believing that purpose must be extraordinary. Frankl rejected this entirely. He believed meaning could be found in ordinary acts, in consistent work, in showing up fully where one is needed. Purpose does not require uniqueness. It requires sincerity. This is why comparison is so corrosive. It convinces people that their lives must look impressive to be meaningful. But meaning is not measured by visibility. It is measured by alignment, by whether your actions feel coherent with your values and capacities. Purpose does not shout, it stabilizes. You don't find it by waiting for clarity. You find it by committing to something small and staying long enough to be shaped by it. So perhaps the question is not, what is my purpose, but where can I place myself so that my effort matters? The answer will not arrive fully formed, but if you follow it carefully, it will grow clearer, not as a grand revelation, but as a life that slowly begins to feel its own weight. And that is often how purpose reveals itself, not as excitement, but as something you are willing to stand behind. A quiet practice for finding purpose. Instead of trying to answer the question of purpose all at once, Frankl invites something smaller, something more humane. So rather than asking, "What should I do with my life?" try asking a question that fits inside a single day. What is one thing I can take responsibility for today without resentment? Not something impressive, not something that will fix everything, just something that feels honest. It might be a piece of work you've been avoiding, not because it's not exciting, but because it needs care. It might be a conversation you've postponed, not because you're not confident, but because it matters. It might be a routine, a task, or a commitment that quietly asks for your presence. Frankl believed that meaning appears where responsibility is accepted freely, not forced. That's why this question matters. If you feel resentment, it's probably not the right place to begin. If you feel reluctance, but not resistance, that's often a signal worth listening to. You can take this one step further. At the end of the day, ask yourself a second question. Not, was I productive, but, did I respond well to what was asked of me today? This shifts the measure of a day away from output and toward alignment, away from performance and toward participation. Purpose does not grow through constant evaluation of yourself. It grows through repeated, sincere responses to what's in front of you, through staying long enough for something to begin to shape you back. If you repeat this practice, not for a week, not for a challenge, but as a quiet habit, something changes. Patterns begin to appear. You start to notice which responsibilities deepen you and which ones drain you, which efforts accumulate meaning, and which ones only consume energy. This is how purpose forms in real life, not as a revelation, but as recognition. And if there are days when nothing feels clear, that's not a failure. Frankl was very clear about this. Meaning does not disappear in uncertainty. It simply becomes smaller, closer, more local. On those days, the task is not to figure out your future, it's to stay present with what still needs care. Purpose doesn't require confidence, it requires sincerity, and often that's enough to begin.
If you appreciated this video, you're welcome to stay a little longer and explore more of our work. What Still Holds is a space for applied philosophy and slow thinking about everyday life. Liking the video or subscribing to the channel helps us continue creating thoughtful video essays. And if there's a philosopher, a text, or a question you'd like to hear explored next, feel free to share it in the comments.